In this episode, we are going to cover the rise and fall of countries, Osiris Rex, the latest from NASA, and how we treat each other, part deuce. Let's get started. All right, I am Chad Taylor, author of the book, Where Are We? Earth According to the Bible. And today, we're going to get in the rise and fall of countries. And so to start off with, there was a man that I met years and years ago, one of the most patriotic, just one of the greatest Americans I've ever met. And one thing I heard him share one time was this. And I suggest you guys check this out. So it's from a guy named Alexander Tytler, or Titler. I'm assuming it's Tytler. He was born 1747 till 1813. So here's a quote from him. It says, "A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence." So before we get into the sequence, I want to discuss this, because one thing that gets me kind of upset is when people say, the democracy, our democracy. It's no, we don't have a democracy. This is a constitutional republic that the United States is. People are trying to turn it into a democracy, though, and I don't want to say if they're being successful or not by changing what we can and can't vote on. I think it was Thomas Jefferson, don't quote me on this, but that said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting over what's for dinner. That's kind of a paraphrase, but I think that's almost verbatim. And so that's democracy. And so if 51% of the people want to enslave the 49%, they can't do it in a republic when we have a set of rules called a constitution. And so in this country, what really keeps us free is two things. God, first of all. Number two are the gun owners. So the Second Amendment goes, everything goes. If they could take your second, they could take your first and everything else. So if you live in America and you don't know what your First and Second Amendments are, let alone the rest of them, you need to educate yourself. So, moving into this, the sequence that he calls. So, during those 200 years, these nations always progress through the following sequence. First of all, from bondage to spiritual faith. And so I actually looked at the dictionary definitions of each of these terms. So, bondage, the state of being a slave. And then they move to spiritual faith. So, the faith, strong belief or trust. So spiritual, strong belief or trust. From spiritual faith to great courage. From great courage to liberty. From liberty to abundance. From abundance to complacency. From complacency to apathy. From apathy to dependence. From dependence back into bondage. Like I said, I don't view this country as a democracy, even though a lot of people say it is. But let's just hypothetically say that it is. Where do you suppose we are in this? So I had to look up, some of these words just to make sure I had the definition right. Okay, so I'm just going to go down the list here. So the state of being a slave, to spiritual, strong belief or trust, to the ability to do something they know is difficult or dangerous, to liberty, the state of condition of people who are able to act and speak freely. I just picture people coming from Europe, having all the oppression there and, making their way over to the United States and, going through all these stages. Abundance, the affluence or wealth. And so I guess we can picture what times these are in history, and we can just picture this cycle. And then complacency, a feeling of being satisfied with the way things are and not wanting to make them better. I can certainly see a lot of people like that. Apathy is the lack of feeling or of interest. And I really see that as being empathetical and really being able to help others and dependence, a state of having to rely on someone or something. To me, I mean, in general, I mean, think of the lack of the lack of feeling or interest, or a state of having to rely on someone or something. Finally, after that stage is a state of being a slave, right back into the previous cycle. And so it's just something to think about. It's an interesting, the first time I heard somebody talk about this, I thought it was very, very interesting. So, Osiris Rex. Now, Osiris Rex is the latest thing from NASA. It just came out yesterday. Some news about Osiris Rex. So, Brenda, did we get that video sent to us earlier? Because I had a chance right before this to watch this. I don't even want to say it's an ad. I'm not even sure what this is, but I'm assuming this is the ad for the show. Not really sure how to take this, but you guys tell me what you think.
Traveling more than 1 billion miles through space, NASA's Osiris Rex finally reached asteroid Bennu. The historic expedition will mark the first U.S. mission to bring samples from an asteroid back to Earth.
Bennu, a pretend asteroid, has a pretend machine. Fly fake miles to pick up some dust, which some pretend white coats will pretend to. Find some clues, yeah right. Oh, fake mission, named after a pagan god. The same old acronym. Kind of reminds me of another one, I think. Lucifer, a big old telescope. The Vatican's project. To see their actual god. I mean, no it isn't. Yes it is. No it isn't. Yes it is. No it isn't. Yes it is.
Its name stands for Origin Spectral Interpretation Resource Identification Security Regolith Explorer. Now, more than 2 years after its launch, Osiris Rex is ready for its next mission.
Yeah, to Uranus. Those Uranus jokes, they just come out of nowhere. So, anyway, I mean, how silly is that? The notion of flying nearly 1 billion miles to land on blah, blah, blah. I mean, 2018, does anybody actually believe this stuff anymore? Apparently they do, because people buy it, but awfully silly. I mean, really, really silly when you think about it. I used to be enamored by this kind of stuff, like most of us when we grow up in this and we see the images from, being little kids. We get caught up in that, and then we, in general, don't question these things. They give us these, what I've noticed is they give us these tidbits that, so there's this fact, there's that fact. Is there really volcanoes on Mars? Is there really this or really that? Just to distract us from the fact that none of it's real. The images that we get are totally CGI, so on and so forth. I think I preach to the choir here. But, so getting into, last week I talked about, let me back up a sec. Do you guys find it interesting that it's Osiris, this Egyptian god that they name it after? It just happens to have this, the acronym is just ridiculous. Orbital blah, 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 Rex. So it's silly. Just like that Lucifer telescope, if you guys aren't familiar with that. With the Vatican, they own some observatory at Mount Graham, if I remember right, it's either Arizona or New Mexico, somewhere around there. It's like, yeah, they just happen to name it Lucifer by accident. It's just ridiculous. But, okay, how we treat each other, part 2. I think it was 2 episodes ago, I talked about, 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and how we treat each other. And I just kind of want to recap on a couple things. And so I know last week I talked about racism and kind of in general terms, kind of a wider scale terms of racism. And so I kind of wanted to revisit something on this, just to give a little bit more insight, I guess, is kind of what I'm thinking here. So if we look at the story of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses, now they're they're siblings, right? And so there's one part where Moses marries an Ethiopian woman, and Miriam is giving Moses grief for marrying this Ethiopian woman. So you could say that this is I don't know if it's the earliest case of racism that you want to see in the Bible, but that's kind of how I see it, is that he's getting grief for marrying this woman, right? And what does God do? Miriam gets leprosy, and I'm sure some of you guys know the story even more than I do, but she gets leprosy and has to go through all this, rigmarole to remove that, and just to basically repent of giving Moses grief for marrying this Ethiopian woman. And so we can look at kind of God's attitude towards how we treat others. I think it's very, one of the things Jesus did when he was here was he showed us how to treat others. And just by his actions and by what he said, and just goodness, right? And so I find that very interesting. And also the Good Samaritan story. So the people of Samaria that lived near the Jewish people were like looked down upon. And they were just a group that they didn't want to interact with them. And so the Samaritans kind of kept themselves. The Jewish people kind of kept to themselves. And that was that. And so the story of the Good Samaritan with well, I'll just give you the nutshell. You guys can look it up. But so Jesus gives this example of who is my neighbor and who is treating this person, the way they should be. And the story is, somebody's in need. There's a man in need. He's in trouble. He's hurt. And people just pass him by. And then eventually a Samaritan walks by and takes him in, helps him out, and it's just a great story. And so here it is that you see these two groups of people, and he's using this outcast group of people that is kind of looked down upon from the Jewish people as an example of, somebody that is different than you, somebody that is foreign, I guess, and treating you like a neighbor. So who is my neighbor? It's not just the guy that lives right next door to you, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, who is my neighbor? It could be the very people that you in general look down upon or whatever. And so that example of how does he want us to be with other people and how should we treat others? And, the way I look at the race and, is God made all of us, right? And so back with Adam and the whole fall and all this kind of stuff. And so to look down on people just in a whole, whether it's on sex or whether it's on race or whether it's on whatever, to me, it's like looking down upon God's creation in a negative way. So it's like, yeah, I think it's one of the smallest minded things we can do is just to say, I don't like him because he's this color or her because she's a woman. I mean, I just have a lot of empathy for people. And so people that are that kind of mindset, it's like, man, if that's what you're struggling with, you got some issues. Like there's so much better things to have on your mind than something just as ignorant as that. Not even ignorant, just stupid. But anyway, and there's certainly racist people in this world. My talk last week wasn't to minimize racism. There's always been racism. There's going to be racism probably until Jesus descends on the clouds in the future. So my goal wasn't to minimize that fact, because it's always going to be the case. There's going to be a-holes that are white. There's going to be a-holes that are black or Hispanic or you name it. There's always going to be. My point is, how do we react to that? I cannot change how somebody acts to me and how they treat me or whatever. I can't do anything about that. I have no input over somebody else's attitude or their actions. What I do have control over is how I react to those things and how I don't let those things bother me. Just because somebody doesn't like me because they're having a bad day, or it's like I've never had any, black gentlemen treat me poorly. Of course I have. And so what? Does that mean I have any attitude towards them? No. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're this or that. Maybe they just don't, whatever. I don't really care. It's not my problem. My attitude is that I'm not going to let that affect me. And I'm certainly not going to let that affect my kids. And so we do have control over our actions and our reactions to them. And so this is kind of one thing I wanted to touch on, because I briefly talked about this last week, is giving our kids a victim mindset and how important it is to not pass on our issues onto our kids. And I know if you guys have seen my talks before, is I tend to wear these just to show. Let's see if they'll fit over. Hey, what's up, Carlos? So I tend to wear these when I show that we have a false worldview And that until we see things the way Jesus does exactly, all of us are wearing these filters and we're wearing these lenses. And these are biases, these are prejudices, these are our own issues. I mean, all of us have had things happen in our childhood that we bring along with us throughout our life that are a pair of these that shouldn't be there. But we need to acknowledge our own problems. And so this is what I see so many parents do is they go, okay, I have this issue. Let's say you legitimately had something terrible happen to you as a kid. I see so many parents, they take these off and they go, here, son, I want you to be a victim now. Here, let me put these on your face. My goal as a dad is to give my kids as few of these as possible. I want them to see things the way Jesus does. And so I need to acknowledge myself and look at and reflect and see, what am I doing? And through prayer especially, what am I doing that is passing along things that are false, that shouldn't be there? Yes, they might be something legit that happened to me that I don't want my kids to repeat. I want to break any cycle that is not right. And so I just see this subject as one of those. And let me show you this here. This is something. What I don't really care if I get flack, because this is something that needs to be discussed. It doesn't matter what race you are. We need to break this cycle. We need to look at us as humans, as us, and include all of us through this. And so I see this, and this is so sad to me. Let me bring this up here, and it's, dear child, when black parents have to give the talk. You know, so the talk, oh, that's the sex talk, right? No, it's not the sex talk. Okay, they're sitting down.
Dear child.
Dear child.
Dear child.
The reason we have to have this talk is because you are a black child in America.
And we are the most racist nation in the world. And for those of you guys that are black out there, this is not a black, white, whatever thing. This is let's break the cycle of this mindset. This country, it's not perfect. Yes, of course, there's racist white DBs out there, for sure, without a doubt. What control do we have over them? We have control over our reactions and not treating ourselves certain ways and passing those ways on to our kids. For generations, black parents have had to have the talk with their children. We ask parents and young adults to give the talk on camera.
I need you to know that, man, there's so many things going on in the world.
I won't lie to you, you're going to see some things that are going to break you down. It's going to hurt.
I know how hard it is for you to see yourself in the place of Tamir Rice.
So I need you to always be prepared and always be on your guard. And it takes away from you being a little kid, I know.
And that's exactly. These little kids, you know, I bring my kid. I got a 3-year-old boy. I take him, or me and my wife take him to the park. We're in an area that is very diverse. And it is quite regular. We are the only white family there. You name it, you know, it's a very diverse area. So, and I see these kids running around. They don't look at each other as, oh, you're Indian, you're Asian, you know, you're black, you're whatever. These kids don't care. They're having a great time interacting with each other, and it's a beautiful thing. And so we as parents come along, and yeah, I had this thing when I was a kid happen to me from this black guy. So you know what? I'm going to put my issues onto you. And breaking these children don't need to be thinking about these kinds of things. And let's break this cycle of prejudice or of victimhood or whatever. And this is not just a black-white thing. This is every single race. This is a sex thing. This is everything. Let's break the cycle, and let's keep going.
But I'm trying to protect you right now.
This just upsets
It takes away from you being a little kid.
It does take away from you being a little kid. So why are you doing it?
I know, but I'm trying to protect you right now.
If you are approached by police,
Just stay calm.
Don't fight back. Don't give any rebuttals. You have to understand, if you want to stay alive.
Oh, man. It's all of us. It's yes, yeah, sure. You want to have the talk with your kids about how to interact with police, but don't make it a race thing like you're just a target for whatever color you are.
You have to do what they say.
Because it could be the difference between me seeing you again and not seeing you again.
Sad to say, sometimes it may not even work.
Because black kids today are like target number one for police. You know, you're just open season. I mean, what does this do to impressionable kids? You know, yes, there are certainly cops, white cops, whatever kind of cops, that have killed black kids or killed white kids or killed Asian kids or done things that they shouldn't do. You better believe it. There's absolutely terrible things like that. But it's not some kind of an epidemic, because then it goes from, well, if the white cops are like that, then white people in general are like that. And what does the powers that be, what do they want to do? They want to keep us divided. They want to keep us separated and angry with each other. They don't want us to be like this with each other. They don't want us to be together. And so what I see is the powers that be and the media and you name it, and this world in general, wants us all fighting with each other over sex, over politics, over religion, over race, especially sex and race, because they're things we can't change. No matter how much you think you can have a sex change, you are a man or woman. And so they want us fighting over these things that especially we have zero control over. That's how I see this. And so what if we were to get over this white, black, whatever issue, move on to greater things, then we become a threat at that point. And so this is completely divide and conquer. And you see on the news all the time how it says, you know, we're a divided nation. We're a divided nation. To me, what they're trying to do is divide the nation by giving you that mindset. I talked about that last week, where they're giving us this mindset of whatever. So think of this. Let's say the housing market has just been pretty good. Let's say it's at a 9 out of 10. It's doing pretty good. It's kind of has its fluctuations up and down. What if the media all of a sudden were to say, oh, the housing market's just about to crash, just about to crash? What if every media outlet started saying the housing market is just about to crash? Oh, my goodness, you better sell whatever. What would happen? That, in turn, would put it into people's minds that the housing market, even though everything looks like everything's cool, the housing prices are good, everything's good, houses are selling, but everything around me is telling me it's just about to crash. What are people going to do? They're going to start, oh man, I better dump my house, you know, and then it turns into supply and demand. Huge supply, low demand at that point. What would that cause? The housing market to crash when it was doing fine before. And so what I see is the media, and I see the world at large telling us we're divided, we're divided, we're divided, we're divided. So therefore, we put it into our heads that apparently we are. And then every little piece of evidence that can support that is pushed to the front of the line and gets shoved in our faces. And so any instance where, you know, some white cop kills somebody that they shouldn't have is like headline news, and there's rioting, and it's terrible stuff. It should never happen. But you got to understand, we are being played against each other. We are absolutely being pitted against each other. And we need to be able to see through this and get over this. All these issues that we have no control over. God made us black. God made us white. We are the way we are. We are male or woman, you know, man or woman. And so let's get over this, these issues, and move on to the greater things, because then we can actually, and working together. So
I'm just going to be honest. It may not work at all.
Let me skip to this other one real quick. I hope I'm kind of coming across the way I should. United we stand, divided we fall.
We actually have a line that we do at our house. We practice this.
I'll finish with this.
What is it?
I'm Ariel Sky Williams. I'm 8 years old. I'm unarmed, and I have nothing that will hurt you.
I mean, come on. You're teaching your 8-year-old daughter to put her hands up and to preach it. I mean, what kind of worldview is this little girl going to have? You know, yes, it's important to understand how to act with police. Keep your hands on the wheel, and so on and so forth. And just how to be towards others. Anyway, and then if you fast forward through these other videos, man, you see these kids just bawling, just crying, and you're traumatizing these kids by putting your victim status onto your kids. My kids are not going to view themselves as a victim. They know who they are in Jesus, and they're going to continue to go down that path. They're not going to be victims. So, anyway, I hope I'm sorry. This is just because I view this as us. I don't view this as them, they. Oh, this is just that race, this race. No, it's us. It's us as human beings working together and getting over these kind of issues, and just breaking that cycle. So, speak life into our kids, not death. You know, it's so important to speak life over your kids. And then the power of the spoken word. And, you know, the example of Job. Job's greatest fear came upon him. You know, it's don't give the devil a stronghold. And if you give the devil a foothold, you know, whether it's fear of this, there's one good kind of fear. There's no other good kind of fear except the fear of God. And so, you know, what are we instilling into our kids? A life or death. And yeah, because the devil will certainly take that foothold and make it a stronghold. Let's see. And the talk should be, this is the talk. This is the talk. You want to give your kids a talk? It's, son, some people are going to treat you good. Some people are not going to treat you good. Pray for both of them. You know, don't let them and their attitudes towards you change who you are. So, let's see here. Let's see. I think I covered most of this. What I think. Wow, I already covered. And then think of this. The average immigrant is 3 to 4 times as likely to become a millionaire in this country than people who are born here. And so immigrants come to this country and they're not going to sit there and mope over certain things. They're just going to work their butt off. 3 to 4 times as likely. Think about that. To become a millionaire. It's funny. I got all these notes and I already covered most of these, I think. So, you know what time it is?
Funny dad joke time!
All right. Let me make sure I got my button ready. I just watched a documentary about beavers. It was the best damn show I've ever seen. You know, damn, D-A-M. Anyway. Let's see. With that, wow, I was rambling for that long. Hi, everybody in the comments section. Love to see you guys in here. I want to take a minute to just acknowledge all you guys in here. Thank you for being here. I wanted to interact with you more, but I wanted to get through all that. I think it's such an important subject that we need to be aware of these kind of issues where we're being pitted against each other. So, Joe Garcia from QE 2019, Question Everything Conference, February. Good to see you in here, Joe. Good morning. Mia, great to see you in here. Been praying for you with your what? How should I say this? This is where it goes with speaking life and not death. With your triumph, that's what I should say. Nate Wolf, Fired for Truth. Sure love you, brother. Great to see you in here. Fired for Truth. You can check out his his YouTube channel as well. Rin Tin Tin. Good to see you in here. Marla, always great to see you. Good morning. Let's see. By the way, you have 2 books on the way, Marla. They should be here anytime. Be there anytime, I should say. Joe. Let's see. Carlos, great to see you in here. Carlos Peguero, back from your trip. I love your footage, by the way, Carlos. Really cool stuff. Really cool. Wow, you guys are having a good chat in here. Aurora, great to see you in here. Got to meet you back in February, if I remember. I think it's February. Griffin, how you doing, buddy? Great to see you in here. Oh, that's a good Griffin. I think that evil is trying to divide us on as many facets as possible so that the Antichrist can come in the name of love and unity to bring about the New World Order. He or she will be heralded as a hero that will end the disparity between the races, sexes, etc. Good. That's a very good observation. I'd be surprised if it's not something along those lines as well. Exactly, Griffin. Good morning. Yep. All right. Donna, great to see you in here. Yep. Griffin, sure proud of you, brother. And then on Facebook, let's see here. How do I mute the phone? Britton, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you in here. Joe, good to see you. Paul, on the plane. You guys check out Paul on the Plane's YouTube channel. Joe Hell, you got a YouTube channel as well. Britain, the talk about white people are this, honestly. Yep. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for being in here. Great to see you this morning. And you know what's funny too? I just saw I'll finish with this. I just saw the newest Wreck-It Ralph. Every so often, it's probably been 2 years. There's a movie theater that has those nice big reclining chairs. Like they got rid of like 2/3 of all the chairs and put in these big, cozy, reclining leather, the electric ones, man. Pretty cool. And probably been 2 years since I've been to a movie and brought the whole family there. And our boy liked that Wreck-It Ralph. And it's funny, the kinds of things that you pick out, you know, that's kind of over the heads of the kids. But yeah, anyway, just got to go there. So that was kind of a nice family time. So anyway, y'all, you guys have a great rest of your week. I will see you on Friday. And this is Coffee with Chad. Here you go. I'll leave you with this. This is, it's called Gent. Here you go.